Welcome back, everybody, to A Little Less Fear podcast. I'd like to introduce Eric Teplitz. He's passionate about helping others open themselves up to a more expansive sense of what is possible, overcome resistance to following their interests, passions, curiosities, and dreams, and achieve a greater sense of meaning, purpose, and life satisfaction. He is a writer who has published over 100 articles on Eric's Inspired Living blog, a personal coach and creator of the online course Opening to Greater Possibilities, which is full of practical tips for getting unstuck and living a more fulfilling life. Welcome to A Little Less Fear podcast, Eric. Very nice to meet you, my fellow native buddy. LA native, I meant to say.
Thank you so much, Lino. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm not from LA originally, but I grew up in Philadelphia, East Coast. But I've been here for 20 plus years. What's that?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is home for you now for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's been kind of a whirlwind with the temperature. I mean, it's probably like, I just had to turn on the AC right now because it was 80 degrees in my condo.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Oh, but you're in the west side, so you're getting a little cooler.
It's still, it's a lot warmer here though than usual as well. Yeah.
So, hey, Eric, I want to know about your journey. What brought you to where you are at today as a life coach?
Wow. Yeah. Man, there really isn't a short version of this. So feel free to nudge me along if you need to.
Sure.
I think that there was, in a sense, what I find fascinating is I've been a journaler for many, many years, and I talk about the importance of journaling in my own journey and in getting in touch with yourself on a really deep level. I'm a huge proponent of journaling. So what's fascinating, if you keep a journal for a really long period of time, like I've done, and then if you happen to go back for whatever reason, and you can read an entry, in my case, I can go back 20, well beyond 20 years, and read exactly kind of where I was at, where my mind was at on a given day. Mm-hmm. And what's fascinating about this is that there are parts of us, I think, that are a consistent thread pretty much from the beginning. So you asked about my journey and how I became a life coach.
Yeah.
So I think that there was a life coach in me probably from very early on. But I did not assume that specific role in that specific way for quite a while. I've always been fascinated by human motivation and human potential. These are subjects that have interested me as far back as I can remember. Mm-hmm. And, obviously I'm still learning about myself. I think that self-knowledge is a lifelong game. Know thyself, right? But yourself changes. And constantly. Yeah, constantly. And life, the world around you is changing. And so if you find yourself, for instance, in a situation you've never been in, it's an opportunity to learn something new about yourself because you've never been tested maybe in this specific way before. So I've throughout my life been so curious and so interested in this idea of, first, I think from just observing myself and observing that I was, I like to say that I'm the least and most motivated person I have ever met.
The least and most?
And most. In other words,
all at once?
No, not all at once. It depends. And that's the thing that's so intriguing is how can this be, right? How can I be so motivated at certain times and in certain contexts, and then utterly unmotivated in others? And so this is part of what I like to think of as like decoding the motivation puzzle. And I really believe it's different for everyone. Not only is it different for everyone, but it changes over time because your values change, your life changes, your priorities can change. So the things that may have motivated you 20 years ago they may apply, but they may no longer apply at all. You might.
Yeah, most likely they don't apply at all.
Most likely, at least they're somewhat different. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for instance, like it's very common for people, younger people, and I realize that is such a relative thing. So let's say people in their 20s. Okay. I just turned 50. So to me, and if you're in your 20s, you're still very young.
Yeah.
But like when you're young, a common thing is, you want to be rich and famous. That's especially in this culture. Like those are very common sort of aspirations that are kind of culturally programmed, I think. And that might be very important to you when you're in your 20s. And then maybe by the time you hit your 40s, they may be maybe not important to you at all.
Yeah.
And that's kind of fascinating, isn't it? Um,
Totally.
yeah. And so, I guess what I'm trying to tell you, Lino, is I've always been a student of the human condition and the human mind and human psychology, even if I wouldn't have called it that. I've just always been so interested in people and so curious about, especially, people who have, like yourself, overcome unbelievable challenges. My mind immediately wants to know, how to do that. What did this person do? How did they motivate themselves? Really, how did they endure? What do they know that I don't know?
Mm.
So this is something that I've just, uh, gone through life very curious about and interested in. So I think that is a part of what informs my coaching, is just being deeply interested in people. And there are things that we all share, but we also have our own uniqueness as well. And what I was, just to finish the thread about journaling, the reason I brought up journaling is that I can go back in my journal, let's say literally 20 years to the day. I can open up a journal entry and I can see the ways in which I have not changed at all. I am the same person. And maybe I'm even struggling with the same thing that guy was struggling with 20 years ago. And in a certain sense, that might be discouraging. Like, really, I'm still wrestling with this? Why is that? But then in other ways, I can see how much my life has so dramatically changed since then. And so my point is that there are aspects of us, I think, that are maybe always there. Maybe they're like identifying aspects of our soul that are with us for our entire life journey. And then there are other things that shift and change. And as we hopefully grow and evolve, things that may have been a big deal to us in the past,
Yeah.
we may have kind of graduated from that particular issue. Maybe not, though, or maybe we've circled around and we're now facing it, but at a different level. But there are definitely, I can look back and say, wow, I've come such a long way in some respects, and in other respects, it feels like I'm not at all. Like, I even question, have I progressed at all in this facet, right, of my life?
It's
So,
really, really interesting. You're actually, I'm recollecting that just recently I was looking back at some of the stuff that I wrote, because I'm a poet and I've been writing since I was 7 years
mm,
old.
mm,
And some of the stuff that I wrote maybe 10 years ago, the thing that remains true to my core persona or spirit is when I write about love and passions and music.
mm,
That seems to be the same. But whenever I look back at the stuff about written about pain and heartache and will my life, will this ever change? Those are the things that have changed. But the thing that's remained true is the me wearing my heart on my sleeve, like that, the pure love
mm.
essence. That's what's remained true for me.
I love that. That's great. I
Yeah.
can I can relate to that, really. I've always been very expressive. I don't know if I even have a poker face in me. It's like, if I'm feeling a certain way, it's probably going to be obvious to the people around me.
Yeah,
And
great.
yeah, and like yourself, I've always written in some form, and that's evolved over the years, from poetry to short stories to songs to blog posts to just so writing has been an outlet for me, in terms of one outlet in terms of self-expression, not the only
Yeah.
one, but yeah.
And so
And,
then what about you? What have you seen has remained true to who you are today, like through the
mhm.
years, and what has changed?
Yeah, so I think I started answering that, which is that I've always been very curious, very interested in humans.
Yeah.
We are fascinating creatures. Um, and the human mind and human motivation, it blows my mind that not only can, because here's the thing, if you can decode, let's just say, your own, I like to refer to it as the motivation puzzle. If you can decode it for yourself, if you can become a master of understanding what motivates you and what doesn't, then pretty much you can do anything.
That's
Really, if you
true.
think about it, if you know how to motivate yourself, if you know what things are going to motivate you and what things are not, then you can't control everything in the world, but you can make conscious decisions and changes to your environment, and you can help create at least an immediate environment that facilitates and nurtures you in such a way as to keep you motivated, and to do the things that from experience help you stay motivated. So that's been something that's been a common theme of mine. I've also always been interested in creativity and in the creative and performing arts in one way or another throughout my life. So that's been another thing that has never, that's always been there, it feels like. And yeah, those are the immediate things that come to mind. I'm sure there are many others. And in terms of things, how I've changed, in some ways I've mellowed quite a bit, which surprises people who meet me because they think I'm full of energy and like, this is the mellow version of you. And I'm telling you, if you talk to people who knew me back in the day, they would say, yeah, he's kind of chilled out.
Wow.
So I've always had a lot of energy and you know, I would call it enthusiasm. That's the word, enthusiasm. When I like something, first of all, I usually don't just like it. I
You
love
love
it.
it.
And I champion it. And when I become interested in something, I tend to dive in really deep. So so there's a I guess, I'm thinking about this. I'm answering this. I'm talking my way through an answer to your question. And I'm realizing that I think one way in which I've changed, and maybe this is natural to a certain extent that comes with aging, is that the highs and lows are not as extreme as they once were. Certainly, like when I think of my teenage years and even in my 20s, the highs could be really high and the lows could be really, really low. And I think I think it's still, I still certainly am capable of both, but I feel like there's more of
Balance.
more balance. It's that range has narrowed, but in a healthy way.
Yeah.
So I feel like that is one difference. And then, I think also just values and priorities change. One of the blessings, I think, again, I think it's a common function of getting older. And I'm 50. I'm not, I'm not ancient yet. Maybe by some people's standards. But is that one of the gifts of becoming older is you tend to feel more comfortable in your own skin because you know yourself better.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of care less what other people think in the
Totally.
best possible way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're not going to be like hung up over what did this person think of me, or it's what matters more is, am I being true to myself? Am I living in an authentic way? Am I living by what's important to me? Those are the things. And if they happen to make other people happy, fantastic. I don't want to make people unhappy, but
Right.
I'm not going to, like pretzel myself into these contortions just to make other people happy or do what other people expect me to do.
Right.
I think it becomes a bit easier with age. Not for everyone necessarily, but for me, in my case, I could say that.
I agree with you. It's been the same case with me, so I totally agree with you. I'd much
Yeah.
rather be in my 40s than in my 20s.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then the life coaching business, all of that
Yeah.
came because of your passion and wanting to know more and more and more about the human condition and what kind of motivates people and gets them enthusiastic.
That's a piece of it for sure. But there's, remember I said that I think there was a life coach in me from early on. And so that one piece is just being interested in and curious about people and in what makes them tick. So that's for
Yeah.
sure a piece of it. But if that were the only thing, then maybe I would have become a researcher or like not necessarily a clinical psychologist, but like someone who, I mean, that's one route I could have gone
Right.
with that interest, right? But I've also, I think I've from a very young age been an encourager. I like to see other people realize their own potential. I like to see me realize my potential, of course,
Yeah.
but I love to awaken potential in other people as well. So for many years, for example, I taught guitar lessons, and I did that for
Awesome.
quite a long time, really just as a side thing. Okay. And one of the things that was great about doing that was working with a student. And especially if you're, students who were beginners or new to guitar, you have all kinds of natural like concerns and fears and self-doubt and insecurities about it. And am I doing this
Sure.
right? And will I ever be able to, and because I've been around that, so often, both in terms of my own playing and in helping others and teaching others, I kind of feel like I'm in on this secret where I know what your capabilities are better than you do. So you might not be, you might be filled with some doubts and insecurities.
Yeah.
And I can say, don't, you're going to do it. Just let me show you the way. Let me guide you to it. Let me guide you through it. Let me give you some tips. But absolutely, you're capable of far more than you think you are right now. Let me show you how to get there, and that it's much easier than you think. Or now, obviously,
Yeah.
everyone is different and everyone progresses differently, and everyone has a different amount of interest and dedication towards learning, in this case, the guitar. So in a sense, I was doing coaching when in that role as
Yeah,
teaching
that's totally coaching
guitar.
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just throughout my life, just like going about my life, anytime I felt I could help somebody about really anything, if I felt like I was in a position to help them, or if they had doubts about something and I felt like, you can totally do this, you can
Yeah.
crush it, let me show you. Because you know what, I've had that experience of being on the opposite end, and I
Yeah.
know how much of a game changer it is. So I
It
can give
is.
you an example. Here's one example. Okay. I one another sort of common thread throughout my life is I've always loved hiking and being out in nature, and that combination of going for long walks, but specifically doing it in a natural environment as opposed to just an urban environment, let's say. That's fine too, but I really get a lot out of being in nature. That's always fed me and nourished me in a way that I can't even describe. I can't even fully explain it to you. I could try to, but it wouldn't really capture it. It just is something that I know from experience is so filling to me that I don't like, I don't have to do anything to motivate myself to do it. It's like, oh, if I have an opportunity, I'll go out hiking.
Yeah.
Um, again, see, interesting. This is about understanding what motivates you. Um, so, uh, so even though I did a lot of hiking, I was a city kid. I grew up in Philly, and I did not come from a family that was into the outdoors at all, really, barely at all. My dad would go for like walks in local parks, but that was, I never went camping. I never did any of that. I
Mhm.
was never a scout of any kind, right? So I am now 27 years old, and I started hiking with a group called the Appalachian Mountain Club. Up to that point, I had pretty much would just hike on my own or maybe with a friend. But this was a group where you would meet up with people and they would go on hikes together. And,
Yeah.
often in places I'd never been. So I got into doing this, and I met people just by, showing up at enough of these. You meet some of the same people. And this one guy who I really kind of became friends with, we had a lot in common. He was a good deal older than I, but he said, "Hey, Eric," he said, "I'm leading a backpack trip at the end of the month. You want to come?" And I had never, as I told you, I'd never even been camping. I'd never spent a night out of doors in my
Wow.
life at age 27. So I said, "Terry, it sounds great. It sounds like fun, but I
You've never done it.
I've never done this. I don't have any equipment. I don't have any gear. I don't like, I had all these objections, right?
Yeah. You kept
I was
you were giving
interested.
yourself roadblocks.
Well, I had all these, you could call them like reasons for saying no. That I call them objections. So, but I was interested. It's not like I was not interested, but I
Mhm.
had all these insecurities,
Sure.
these sort of doubts about it. And he literally met all of my objections one by one. And he said, "Oh, well, first of all," he said, "I know you can handle it because I've seen you on these hikes and I know you're a strong hiker. So that's not an issue." And I wasn't so concerned about that. But what I was concerned about was like, he's like, "Oh," he said, "I have an extra backpack. I have an extra tent. We can share a stove. I'll show you how to use it. I'll show you how to." I was like, "I don't even know how to set up a tent. I've never." He's like, "Don't
You had
worry
an
about it.
answer to everything.
Yeah." He met every single objection I had. So I basically was left with, well, okay, fine, I'll go.
Yeah.
And I remember we got there. It was at a place called World's End State Park in northern Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And
That sounds cool.
yeah, and we parked our cars in the parking lot, and we were going to take off on this trail that began from the parking lot, and it was this really steep climb up into the woods. And I have this, really tall and pretty heavy pack now that he's just helped me like buckle on, and I have gotten on my back. And we start, it was just a small group of us, maybe half a dozen or so people. and we start up this trail, and it feels very wobbly. I'm not used to this at all. I'm like, oh my, like, what did I get myself into? Oh, can I do this? And all these like fears and anxieties and insecurities popped up as we were like ascending this hill, leaving the parking lot. But this all took place in my mind, I would say within seconds, though. That's what's kind of interesting. I just had this moment of anxiety and this questioning of, should I be doing this? Is this a good idea? And then I'm like, well, what am I? I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm going. I like, well, I'm better or worse, I'm doing this. Now, it was an experience that changed my life. I mean, in a deep way. If it had been crappy weather, who knows, maybe I never would have done it again. Maybe it would have been a one and done experience. I don't know, but it was sort of this like beautiful weekend, idyllic, gorgeous weather, scenery. Everyone in the group was so friendly and helpful and nice. And so there was no reason to be self-conscious about like the fact that I didn't know how to use any of this gear and use a camping stove or set up a tent, and it was literally a life-changing invitation that he had made,
Wow.
this guy. And, I mean, it was literally like 2 years after that experience, I found myself on the Appalachian Trail with a fully loaded backpack to see how far I could go by myself. I ended up doing about roughly 540 miles of the Appalachian Trail backpacking. But this is just goes to show you, like, as I told you earlier, when I get into something, I really get into it.
Yeah,
But
I'll say.
also it was like that experience. Basically what he did was he knew I could handle it. I didn't know I could. I wasn't sure I could do it, but he had no
You
doubt.
saw your potential.
He saw my potential. He had no doubt, and he was willing and able and totally like wanting to help me and give me this experience, And so when being on the receiving end of something like that, I'm so grateful. You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
so grateful. And I've since, enjoyed so many incredible experiences backpacking all over the place because of him.
Oh,
Now, is it possible I would have discovered it some other way? Yeah, it's possible at some point, maybe.
sure. But he was the
But
catalyst, though.
yeah, he was the catalyst and he made the difference for me. And so uh, it really struck me because it's, in a sense, it's really, you could think of it as really easy. All you have to do is show interest in someone, take an interest in them, and believe in them on their behalf. If they don't have that self-belief yet, I call it, I even have a video on my website called Borrow My Belief in You. And I tell this story within that.
Borrow my belief in you. I love
Yeah,
that.
I tell that story maybe even in a more abridged manner than I just did, to explain the power of when someone believes in you, how powerful that is and how transformative that is. And so in that video, I'm urging whoever's listening, if you are full of self-doubt, if you are,
Yeah.
let me just tell you something. If you don't believe in yourself at this moment, borrow my belief in you. And let me tell you why I'm speaking to you through a video. So I don't even know who you are when if you're
Yeah.
watching that video, but it doesn't matter. You know why? Because I am a believer in the human spirit. I've seen it too many times. I've seen so many people, and your own story you were just sharing with me before we hit record. You saw it. My jaw was like, hit the floor. I was like, this is incredible what this person went through. Like, and look at them now. I mean, so I've seen so many examples of this, of people overcoming things and people rising to challenges and people doing things they never thought themselves capable of. And so I know I believe in you.
I believe in you too.
and for you listening, I believe in you. And yes, we've never met, but we're all made up of the same stuff,
Totally.
So and I think of it as, maybe the unifying thing between all of us, if nothing else, is just the human spirit, that spark of life that's in every one of us. So our genetics are going to be different, our environments are going to be different, our life experiences are going to be different, of course. But that basic sort of power, the basic power that's within each of us is something that I am a big believer in. And so coaching again, because I've done this throughout my life in informal ways, it's just part of being me. When I met my now wife, when we first met, we actually met on an organized hike. It wasn't the Appalachian Mountain Club out east. It was the Sierra Club out here. We met on a Sierra Club hike, and she also loved hiking and loved being out in nature. So that was one thing we instantly had in common. But I would take her out, like she had never done more adventurous hikes. And so I would take her, and we did Mount Baldy, which is not too far from where you are. You probably have heard of Mount Baldy, no?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you hiked it?
No, I haven't.
We'll have to go out sometime then, maybe.
Yeah,
if you're interested. Yeah. Anyway, so like Mount Baldy it's over 10,000. The peak is at over 10,000 feet, which on the East Coast, you don't even have mountains that high.
Oh, what? I thought you guys did. Wow.
But anyway, so she was like, I don't know if I can do it. I'm like, oh, you can totally do it. Let's go, And so it's just in my nature to want to, if I'm able to support or encourage someone or to get them to see what they're capable of, if I feel like they can absolutely do something. I want to do everything in my power to help them get there and to help them overcome the sort of self-doubt or insecurities that they may have. Because again, I've been on the receiving end of that, and I know how incredibly powerful it is and how much it opens up your life. That's the thing, Lino, is that like, you could say, well, why is this a big deal? Someone took me out backpacking, and then I've gone backpacking a lot of times since then. Why is that a big deal? I'll tell you why it's a big deal. It's a big deal for so many reasons. First of all, I learned so many skills of just being out in the wilderness. There were a lot of practical skills that I had never learned before that I learned. I also learned a lot of self-reliance, and I learned that I'm, I can take care of myself. And I can have an immersive experience in the woods. Plus those experiences, as wonderful as long hikes, day hikes are, being out in nature in a more immersive way for days and nights at a time, or even a full week or even longer, man, it's such a powerful experience and such a restorative and nourishing experience. So it's given me a sense of self-confidence. It's given me incredible adventures. It's introduced me to people I wouldn't have otherwise met. I mean, it's just like the ways in which that one invitation changed my life. I couldn't even, I'd have to journal about it all day and get back to you. I probably still wouldn't even come up with all the ways in which that has rippled in the positive ripples that have come from that. So that's a long answer to your question about coaching. And I will also say this one last piece of it. So, there's the piece of being fascinated by humans and their potential and what motivates us and what doesn't, and how to figure that out. Because again, I believe it's different for everyone. And I also believe that it changes even over the course of your own life.
Sure, totally.
So it's a subject, but I've also noticed that, I mean, these are extreme examples, but your motivation can flip literally in a moment's time. You have a sudden realization or a sudden awareness or a sudden perspective that's different from the one that you had a moment ago. And that can be it can be like flipping a light switch. And all of a sudden you go from zero motivation to intense motivation. Now it can also go the other way too. Something can happen. You might be incredibly motivated, and then you can have some kind of setback, and then your motivation can evaporate quickly too. I'm equally as fascinated about that, and I've had experiences like that too. So, that's one piece. Then there's this piece of just naturally wanting to encourage other people and to sort of give back gifts that I've been given in terms of, crucial moments in my life where someone believed in me or someone encouraged me to do something, and it made a huge difference. And then the third piece of this, I would say, is that, you mentioned how you much prefer being in your 40s than in your 20s, right? Well, for me, my 20s, and I'm thinking particularly in the mid 20s, that was the roughest time of my life. That was really kind of a dark chapter, dark period. Now, I didn't go through anything like what you did. I mean, from what I heard of your story, I'm thinking about like my, rough times, but that's the thing, is you can't compare yourself with other people. Your experience is your experience, and your feelings and emotions are, they're valid. They're yours, and
Totally.
they're not to be discounted. So for me, in my mid-20s, I went through a very, very difficult time, very difficult, and uh, deeply, deeply depressed. And I have, my life is so much better now in so many ways. And part of me wants, wishes I could kind of go back to my, let's say, 25-year-old self,
Yeah.
and coach him, and encourage him, and give him what he needs, and assure him this is temporary. You're going to get through it. Life is going to get so much better. I know, because I'm you and I've lived it. So again, borrow my belief in you, borrow
Yeah.
my belief in you kind of thing. And so this online course, which you mentioned in my intro that you did, that I created, is called Opening to Greater Possibilities. And I really think that what drove me to create that course, I really feel like I was creating it for my 25-year-old self,
Wow, that's
and
beautiful,
saying,
Eric. Jeez.
yeah, well, I mean, it's just true. And for instance, like my 25-year-old self would obviously and naturally be completely clueless as to how to improve his life, and
Mhm.
how to get over all of these hardships, and how to, yeah, just make his life better. And so what I did was, I did the work for my 25-year-old self. I lived those 25 years since, and I tried a lot of things. And I found that certain things didn't help at all, and certain things maybe even made it worse. But there were things, I really believe this. If you're struggling with anything, keep trying things, and be prepared for a lot of things to not work or not help.
Right.
That's part of the process. Like, there's no
Sure.
getting around that. But don't give up. Don't stop trying. Keep trying things, because you don't know what's going to work for you and what's going to help you. And once you find something, all you need, like, it's kind of like, let's say you're single and you're desperately looking for a partner, and you feel like, who's going to love me? I'm so unique. And they'd have to be all these, like, they'd have to put up with all these weird eccentricities or quirks of mine. Guess what? You only need to find one person
Yeah.
that fits that
Yeah.
bill, one right person. And I'm not saying there's only one, by the way, but I'm just saying that,
Right. That's true.
I'm just saying that if even if you like, let's say, go on dates with 500 different people, that's such a tiny percentage of the world's population. And it's a
Yeah.
lot of dates. But my
Yeah.
point is that all it takes is, when you find something that works for you, it opens up so many doors. And so the idea of that course that I created was, I literally brainstormed, what are all the things that I did and tried that I can remember, that helped in some way move the needle forward, that helped me break out of a stuck pattern, or that helped me improve my life in some way. And I basically just, like, brainstormed as many of these as I could think of. And I basically just categorized them, and put them into modules, that what became course modules. But I also built a framework of the way the course is organized. Is it starts with an introduction to journaling, because that was one of the foundational things that I do to this day, because it's so helpful. So in fact, I offer it as if you sign up, you can sign up for a free preview of the course, and you can get that whole module for free. And it's just an
Oh,
explanation of how journaling can help you.
yeah.
And then I have 3 modules after that are basically mindset modules. I call them guiding principles. That these 3 principles are game changers if you can incorporate them, if you can digest them, and if you can live by them. And they're deceptively simple. Okay. So what I mean by that is that they're very simple to understand, but they might be difficult to implement. It takes practice with all of them. But like, so it starts off about, like, I call it the power tool of journaling, and how that can really fast track a lot of things and help you just get in better touch with yourself. Because ultimately, this is about, if you want to open to greater possibilities in life, the fundamental thing is improving your relationship with yourself, because nothing that you do to change your
Yes.
life on the outside is
Right.
going to matter at all if you don't feel good about yourself on the inside. None of that
So
matters.
true.
So that's why that's the first module. Then I have the three guiding principles, and I can go into those if you want, depending on time, if you want me to go into those, which are basically mindsets that I had to learn kind of the hard way. You know what I mean? But I learned them over time, and I'm distilling them down so that I can just feed them to you in the course. And then there are 8 modules beyond that that are all about implementation and practical suggestions. And the beauty of the course is that you don't have to do all the things. I've done all the things over the course of, like, let's say the last 25 years. You don't have to do all of them. You can just do the ones that jump out at you, that speak to you at this
Yeah.
moment in your life, right? Because undoubtedly some of them you'll go, whatever, not really interested, or you'll go, I already do that, or you'll go, whatever. But something, I can practically guarantee something in there is going to go, oh, I should do that. Like that, that might be something I should do. And so I feel like these are all just, and they're very specific, concrete suggestions. If you do some of these, and sometimes you have to do them more than once, you may have to do, let's say you choose 5 things to do out of the whole course, which is a fraction of what's in there. And you might have to do one of them 12 times. You might have to do one of them only one time, whatever, but like something will shift.
Mm-hmm.
And what's so cool about the course is that you can go through the whole thing, and then let's say a year goes by. Well, guess what? You're a different person a year from now.
Totally.
Right? You know that from your own
Yeah.
experience. So if you go through the course again, something else that might not have even seemed applicable the first time around, something else might pop out, and you're like, oh, yeah. You know what I mean? And so you have lifetime access to the course if you decide to purchase it. And so that's, it's intended, again, I'm thinking of that 25-year-old version of me, and he wouldn't have been able to do everything in there all at once. No, that's not the expectation. But the idea is to get, if you feel stuck in some way, the famous quote about the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, right? If you want to change your life in some way, or if you want to get unstuck in some way, you have to do something different. I mean, yes, it's possible that some random thing can happen, random piece of good fortune can happen to you, and something can shift for you with you having done nothing. I mean, it's possible, but it's far more likely if you're engaged in the process, if you're co-creating, co-conspiring with the universe, the universe is much more likely to meet you halfway. So it's a way for me to attempt to help my younger self by helping other people who may in some way relate or have similar struggles, because again, we have a common humanity. Each of us is unique, but we're not so unique. I mean, we share some fundamental things, right?
Yeah. That's awesome, Eric. My goodness. Thanks so much for your passion, your love, your light, your energy, your purpose. I mean, you're doing what you're natural at, what comes natural to you. And I really appreciate you sharing all of your information. How can our viewers, our watchers, and our listeners find you and your coaching program?
Yeah, just go to my website, which is my name, ericteplitz.com. I'm sure that Lino can provide the link, right? It's Eric with a C, ericteplitz.com. And the cool thing about the website is that there's a ton of free content on there. So you can explore to your heart's content. As he mentioned, there's over 100 articles on the blog, which you can access from that website. There are videos on there. I have a podcast that I started this year called The Person You Want to Be, that I'm totally jazzed about, where I interview people and get their stories, and that you can derive inspiration from people's own incredible stories, other than just what I have to say. And so you can sign up for a free preview of the course. You can also there's a link to my coaching, and I offer a free coaching consultation with anyone that wants to take me up on it. And I'm a zero pressure kind of guy. I don't believe in that. I'm not, I'm here to help. And if I can help you in just even in the course of a single phone conversation, or we do it over Zoom, over a single conversation My goal is to just help you move the needle, move forward in some way, take a step in a positive forward direction, even if it's just one step. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. And then, if you feel like you want to work with me ongoing, certainly that's an option. But I am not into, I'm very personally turned off by people that are, like, put lots of pressure on you and try to sell you things you don't necessarily
Yeah,
want. So
that's what I mean.
coaching is an intimate thing, and it needs to be a fit. It needs to feel like a fit. You need to feel good about, if you sign up with coaching with me, you need to really feel good about it. And I need to really feel good about it. I really need to think I can work with this person and help this person. So, a phone conversation or a coaching consultation is just an opportunity to get to know each other. It's an opportunity for me to offer whatever I can to help you in the moment, regardless of whether or not we ever speak again. So all of that is available via my website.
Eric Teplitz, everybody, on A Little Less Fear podcast. Thanks so much for sharing your love and light. And I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and maybe one day even going hiking. That'd be amazing.
That sounds awesome. Thank you so much, Lino. And your example, again, has already inspired me, just a little that I've heard about it. So I echo back to you all that you thanked me for. I thank you for, because you're a living testament to what people can overcome. So
we're doing this together. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a
all right.
lovely day, and we'll talk to you soon.